particular discussion, we would like to talk about automation solutions. And since all of you are uh, heading the IT functions in your respective institutions, would like to talk about one is directly what sort of technology has been deployed, but more importantly, we would like to touch upon uh, how they have made the hospital optimally productive, especially if we look at the scenario in the last 1.5 years during the pandemic, when even hospital infrastructure and services have been challenged. And two very important is one is being optimally productive, but the technology has to be accessible and economical to affordable to. So, how have you looked at the budgetary aspects? And the third and important part we would like to talk about is the security aspect is, and how does it conform to the medical legal requirements in terms of in healthcare segment, which is also important. The technology, how is it conforming to the medical legal requirements? So, before we start, I would take this opportunity to introduce the very esteemed panelists here. So we have Prashun Chatterjee. He is a CEO of Nemcare Hospitals. Welcome, Prashun. We have Abdullah Salim, Group CIO of Omni Hospitals. Welcome, Abdullah. We have Praveen Bish, CIO of Amrita Hospitals, Faridabad. Welcome, Praveen. And we have Huzefa Merchant, Head IT of Saifi Hospital in Mumbai. Welcome, Mr. Merchant. We my first question, and I'll start with you, Prashun, on this. We talked about automation, and we talked about how automation can help in making the hospitals optimally productive. So now, looking back at the scenario in the last 1.5 years, when all hospitals in terms of infrastructure and delivery services have been challenged, how has automation helped? And if you can briefly mention the use cases, how they have benefited the hospitals. Prashant.
Thank you very much for inviting me as a panelist here. And I welcome all the other panelists. To start with, what I would like to say is uh, this IT or the technology has given us a lot of leverage during this COVID pandemic. How I will tell you, the the first thing is the virtual treatment of the patients. We were doing telemedicine. Definitely, telemedicine was something which was done earlier, but this time, due to the technology and due to the pandemic and lockdown, something called virtual OPD also started. That is something a boon to the automation and boon. Basically, discovery is the mother of invention. So, like we discovered something to reach to the patient's house in terms of technology. Uh, even like there was a technology advancement in terms of taking care of patients in home quarantine. That was another product which was added to this full basket of our service delivery. So that is also again thanks to technology, and for technology we could do it. Now, see, I am in Northeast, so we are working out on something uh, reaching to patient or penetration of patient via technology, because here the healthcare facility is not available in the remotest or interior part of uh, the various states or in this region. So again, technology, we are using technology to reach to the remotest place. We are trying to set up something called tele ICU, wherein we will be tied up with 10 beds in each city in different hospitals, which will be clinically managed by us, technologically managed by. We are talking to various partners and see with whom we are going to partner about it. So that we can give our clinical resources treatment, which can reach the doorstep of the patients. See, the maximum patients you will see are here in this particular northeastern region. They come to their injuries or come to their diseases while transportation. So if we can have some arrangement to treat them at their local places, give them the first level of services to stabilize them, and then transport them under our supervision of doctors. I think that is going to improve the longevity. So we have started something on a pilot project, which we think we will be able to complete by this year end, and then roll it on to different. We will start with something like a 40-bedded services, and then we scale it up to 400, 500 bed service, reaching out to the remotest place of Northeast. The challenge is there are three types of challenge. One is the technological connectivity, which definitely we are going to work with a technology partner. So our investment in that particular project will be in terms of clinical resources, as well as the training of the clinical resources at different spoke level, so that they are trained and can do the first level of treatment. So this is how.
Definitely. I'll come to the challenges later in another question. This is a very interesting part about the virtual OPD that you have talked about. I'll next come to you, Abdullah, with your experience in Omni Hospital and overall in terms of automation or technology deployment, what you feel have been the game changer in the last 2 years, if I may say.
Great. Thank you very much for the asking the question. And I believe the gentleman has already covered right from the virtual consultation, radiology, tele ICU, and uh, which has given the organizations to engage the patient, getting engaged in terms of it's a hospital need, and the other side the patient need. So the technology during this pandemic has definitely has played a vital role to getting engaged anytime, any moment with the patient. And the most probably the technology has played a vital role, especially for the hospitals for the second wave, where the hospital has started treating the patient to home quarantine and then hotel quarantine, and they are trying to treat them unless the hospital checks the patient condition in terms of seriousness, then they transfer to the respective hospital and then start treating the patient. So in that case, the technology has taken the one step ahead to improving the patient experience. Improving the patient experience means to unnecessary making expenses by the patient, and then the hospital has given a chance to those patients who are really need the beds. The patient fraternity, means patient people were struggling to get the bed. So because it was very a panic situation, everybody is getting fever, simple headache or a symptom, kind of symptom, they rush to the hospital and they say, no, I want to admit, and please admit and let me get the treatment. But in that direction, that technology has played a vital role. If you'll see the technology roles and right from the virtual OPD to a hospital visit and getting the treatment done, and the patient discharge, and post discharge the patient monitoring, and then doing virtual consultation, or readmitting the patient based on the patient conditions, and whereby whether the patient is there at hotel quarantine or home quarantine, they have where the medical devices, and then those medical devices data is getting collated in the applications, and the doctors and the treating doctors are taking the right decisions to treat the patient. So especially the concept in India, the geriatric care was not, and now it has come in picture, that especially for the chronic patient, apart from talking from the pandemic, the chronic patients monitoring, remote monitoring is happening, and the hospital is playing a vital role towards treating the patient remotely rather than calling them to the hospital. So, especially for the epilepsy patient, heart failure patient, diabetes, and your hypertension, it's not required in terms until unless the patient get the complexity, and they will keep monitoring and keep treated in the primary care virtually. So you will see that if the technology per se, obviously it has insisted the patient and the doctors to adopt the technology. But again, there are too many challenges. But I think that the challenges will take at a later stage. The biggest challenge is that deployment of people process technology, because
Yeah.
technology is not the only item that is going to help you and play a magic, and then you will getting the what we're looking for. So until unless it is stitched with the right people and right process, we'll talk and then down the line when the same questions will be asked. Over to you, gentlemen.
Sure. Thank you. Praveen, I'll come to you now with if you can restrict to the technological advancement challenges, we'll take it up in the next set of questions. So, in terms of technological advancement, what has been the biggest automation related change in the hospital segment that you have seen in the last 2 years?
Sure. So thank you for giving me this opportunity. Um, from the technology standpoint, there are different, kind of strategies we can possibly adopt. What I've seen in the recent past, there has been a little shift. Earlier when we talk about automation, specifically on the healthcare side, was restricted to RPA alone, robotic process automation. But now, when you talk to vendors, when you talk to other colleagues, so there has been a shift in thinking. They are talking about AI, ML. So moving from a low hanging kind of process automation and moving on to a high value automation, kind of knowledge automation, is what they are trying to move towards. And that definitely will be the way the future it's going to be. There are a lot of innovative tools, technologies that are available. One specific one I would like to talk about is the voice recognition. Uh, all of us would kind of agree that when it comes to a provider, a doctor having to enter or capture their medical records for a patient, they prefer writing as opposed to typing. So now with the advancement in voice recognition, it's pretty accurate, almost, I would say, more than 99% accurate. So they are able to dictate and then it gets transcribed automatically right as they are speaking. So it's not even that somebody else is transcribing later and then they have to go back and correct it. It's all happening in real time. So that has been a great technology that we are adopting. We are in the pilot stages, and we will be rolling it out once we do successive, trials with our doctors here. So that is one technology that I think is there. It is there now, and will definitely be captured by a lot of other hospitals, and then have implemented for taking the efficiency gain for the providers, because doctors are by far the most bottleneck resources. They are the highest paid resource, so we want to make sure that we automate their processes as much as possible in order to gain the efficiency and effectiveness of their time. So that being one technology, and the other is we have to make sure that there are processes, like other people have touched upon, to ensure that you're able to monitor the effectiveness of it. So one is to implement something, or you come up with different projects, but how do you ensure that you are making progress? How do you ensure it is performing as you expected? So definitely making sure you're capturing data, you're able to analyze the data, convert that into information, and then when you're able to present the information correctly, it translates into knowledge, and then that is how essentially you can be more aware of what's happening and apply that wisdom going forward in the future. So I would say those are the 4 steps that any project should look at. Start with data, move to on information, then knowledge, and finally the wisdom part of it, which will enable and give you the biggest multiplier factor going forward.
Thank you. Josefa, I'll come to you. What, in your opinion, has been the most significant automation achievement in the healthcare sector in the recent past?
Hi, good afternoon, everyone, and thank you, Rajneesh, for giving this opportunity to me. Uh, Healthcare is one of the most critical industry verticals today, involving patient care and cure. So, having said that, the industry has been constantly facing problems with the lack of good resources and is hit by new technologies and machines frequently to enable them to elevate the levels of services being offered. The last 2 years have been hit by the pandemic, and they have brought out a world of new opportunities and new technologies being adopted far more better way than they were in the past. Like Prashun and Salim and Praveen have already mentioned, the technologies like teleconsultation and telemedicine, which have already been there for the last 2 decades, but they were never adopted for multitude of reasons, have been taken up. So there has been a greater adoption of technology in ways, in more than one ways. A simple scheduling of appointments system, which was not seemed to be, which never seemed to be so important in the past, has suddenly become a very significant part of our operations today. How do we follow up with the patients? How do we make them that ensure that the right communication is always maintained with the patients and doctors and all the stakeholders? Towards that, we have also worked in that area. Then a simple process like the admission process. Okay. Imagine if there were no automation today, and a person has to move from desk to desk like in the old days. It would make their lives much more difficult. As it is, the patient and the relatives are coming in pain to the hospital, expecting them to be taken care of. So that is a place where automation has helped. The single largest example of an automated or of a piece of automation software is the hospital management software today. Now, that itself can take care of, if integrated and implemented to the fullest, can take care of of the complete needs of the patient right from the admission till discharge. Now, whether it being registering the patient, billing doing the billing work for the patient in a far more efficient and faster manner, or whether it is taking the medicines and indenting for the medicines, sending the patients to the for the right investigations at the right time, and getting them back in as fast a manner as possible. So all this can be taken care of by such systems. Again, when it comes to maintaining medical records in the last 2 decades, if you see the number of the amount of data that is being generated today is far more than it was being developed than the complete set of data which was being generated about 2 decades back. So all hospitals, including are sitting on a wealth of data today. So that is one area where automation has definitely helped in making more sense, more meaningful sense out of the data that is there in our databases. So today, if the management wants to have take any decision or see where we are going in any particular function, in any particular area, or a complete general overview, it is possible by means of the automation. So automation is not just about helping the doctors and the nursing and the clinicians make the right decision. Today, The biggest example of automation is the advancement in the medical technologies itself by way of the BME and biomedical equipments that are being used to take care of the patients. The capabilities of these machines have been enhanced many folds today as compared to what they were a few years back, with a lot of artificial intelligence and machine learning capabilities being built into them, so as to make the decision making and automated response to the patient possible. So these are some of the changes that we have seen. I mean, teleconsultations, telemedicines, teleprescriptions, digitization, moving towards a digital transformation. These are now the things that we are taking as essentials moving forward. Simple things like interfacing between the various systems of the hospital. These are definitely being looked at far more readily, with a far more greater acceptance level across all levels. Praveen mentioned about robotic process automation. Now, that itself is helping people elevate the level of the staff, the work being taken by the lowest level staff to the next level. So yes, these advancements are there, and of course there will be many more in the future. Thank you, Rajneesh.
Okay.
Over to you, Rajneesh.
Thank you. We heard all the panelists talk about, and four areas of challenge I can see immediately emerge. We'll take up first three areas. One, we heard about virtual OPD, the telemedicine becoming more mainstream now. But where all these remote treatment or virtual OPD or telemedicine will depend, and especially when we are talking about the hinterland, the remote areas of the country, is the quality of internet connectivity. Being technology leaders, we know the quality of internet connectivity is not uniform across the country, especially in the rural areas and in the remote areas and hinterlands. And healthcare being it's not like any that you can afford a downtime kind of thing. So, how do you manage the internet connectivity challenge? That is my one challenge area. The second channel area I'm talking about is we heard about robotics and increasing use of automation, RPA, in this surgery, but and in other medical procedures also. While that is fine technologically, that also adds to the cost. So, in terms of affordability, one is you deploy technology, but ultimately the one of the critical stakeholders in the ecosystem, the patients, whether it is affordable for them, how as healthcare providers you are managing the affordability issue, and third is we talked about humongous amount of data, which all of you almost mentioned in different formats. Hospitals have gathered data, and there can be a lot of analysis of that data to gain meaningful insights. So, how these meaningful insights can be linked to clinical decision making. So basically, to improve the clinical decision making, otherwise just analyzing data just for analysis sake doesn't make any sense. If it improves clinical decision making, that will make sense. So my three areas now, it's open to all of you. One is internet connectivity, two budgetary issue, and the third is data analysis for clinical decision making. So it's open, anyone can take it up. Yes.
So the first I'll come from the bottom of your questions. The three questions we have asked: one is infrastructure, second one is the
Budget.
data budget, and the third one is the data and analytics on top of it.
Exactly.
The budgetary constraint, definitely after this pandemic, the budgetary constraint has been at least by 50 to 60% addressed by the organization. Because now the organization had understand that without adopting the technology, the patient engagement is impossible. Because it is a demand from the patient perspective. So that the budget's budgetary constraint up 50 to 60% has been addressed. I'm talking about the corporate and a good size of nursing homes as well. So that up to level 60% is present, but down the line definitely is going to address me. And the second is the budget, the cost effective in terms of the infrastructure and in terms of the application. The healthcare applications, mostly 95% is made on the open source technology. You don't have to buy any licenses on that, and that is where the healthcare product development company are insisting, and they are working on that, and they are adding a lot of value to the open source community. So that is also is not a question, major questions to adopt. Now they have given that as you grow, you pay. For example, based on your different proposals are being given, but nowadays they are saying that per OP patient, per IP patient, very nominal amount they're putting it, and they're saying that yes, this is the way we are going to. You don't have to care about your infrastructure, you don't have to care about the licensing part, you don't have to care about only you have to provide the network connectivity and the endpoints, and then you are on, and you are going to start using the application and collating your complete clinical and non-clinical data across the organization. That's the second part of your questions. But if we're talking about the third one, the infrastructure in the rural area, because now in rural area there are these challenges will be there, and this is the government has to come and take vital roles. Still, there are 70,000 villages are there in the country where there's no electricity. No electricity. Forget about the internet connectivity. There's no electricity at all. Even though internet connectivity is given and provided there, the electricity is not there. So this is the problem which is the government is going to resolve, and we have to live with that. And maybe that mostly our populations are living in the villages. More than 65 to 70% is still in the village. So that challenges will be there, but slowly it is being, if you'll see the past 5 years, the way it has been spread out in the same speed, if it is going to spread, then definitely the entire country will be connected through the network and the other vital infrastructure like electricity and so on and so forth. So if the major challenge, the major problem is not the constraint of budget or solution or the current infrastructures in infrastructure where the internet and the current is not there. Even those the tier 1, tier 2, tier 3 city where the adoption of the technology is there and the people are keep talking about. But the challenge is that who is going to adopt the technology. The technology per se, it was very costly earlier, and now the technology is just affordable at any given point of time. But the technology was never challenged. If you see that 40 years ago, the Indian railway ticketing system was developed, and I know that gentleman, Dr. Uday Kumar, who was the topper and passer from AIIMS Ahmedabad, who has designed, developed, implemented, and that screen is still running on the station. If you're going to take the ticket and it print that ticket in just fraction of a minute, and so that you just imagine that what technology was there at 40 years and where the technology we have now. The major challenge is that adopters to the clinical users. And the major challenges is the adopting the technology and the clinical perspective, clinical fraternity, not the non-clinical. Non-clinical has already been adopted. But why this is the challenge which is there is still, up to some extent, the challenges has been push on the doctors to adopt the technology, because patient is enforcing to adopt the technology, not the hospital. Now hospital also has come forward to adopt the technology to put the budget for the IT. Earlier it was not there. If I know in the industry for 4 or 5 hospital, they used to budget for IT a very minimal, maybe that 0.5% of the revenue. But in average, it's supposed to be 2.5% per year of the revenue are supposed to spend on the IT. But 4 or 5 hospital, other hospital, there is no budget at all for the IT. But at least now these hospitals have started budgeting, minimum budgeting to put the technology and to take it ahead to improve the patient experience, to improve the provider experience, and then to meeting the organization goal, and continuously connected with the patient. That's where I would like to put my points. Over to you, please.
Thank you.
Yeah, I would like to. Yeah, can I just add on to it very quickly? I won't take much time. We'll keep it very short. So basically, when it comes to technology adoption, like we were saying, clinicians, yes, it is very, very important, but also very difficult. It's not easy to convince a doctor to start using the system. And some of the ways that we have used in the past is, if you are able to prove to them that their time will actually be saved, and also the patient will be better served. For example, if you are able to capture the allergies of the patient in the system, and then have the clinicians order the medications online, the system is able to trigger if there is, a patient has allergic to a medication, or there is a drug to drug alert. So if we are able to convince the doctors with giving these specific use cases, I have seen them be much more open to it and come forward to adopt technology, and it has greatly helped us, not only ensuring data capture but also for patient safety reasons. So these are some very specific use cases which has been proven and have been very helpful.
I'll take 2 minutes to add this, Diwali, just 2 minutes. I think you have hit the nail, my friend. We are talking to the product who are developing the product. Doctors are saying that we are ready to adopt. Anyway, 25% of the doctors are the early adopters. They are there at the hospital. They are already on the board. But rest of the doctors are talking that if you give me the application which is enable me to script the prescription less than 3 minutes, I vouch for it, and I'll be the first person to adopt it. So now we started talking the technology, the product owner, with 3 goals. They're supposed to develop their solution. It means it should have the faster than paper. This application should have the goal of sub-second response, and the application should be made in such a way that it does not need any training to the end users. And if these 3 goals are made, based on these 3 goals, the solution is made, then the adoption will not be the challenge. And these 3 goals are the major challenge for the product perspective when we're developing the product. But now the people have understood, a few application has been made. For example, if it's a buy and work, now it is known as IQVIA. They have come up with the beautiful applications. For example, I'll give you that the gentleman has talked about the clinical decision support system at point of care. So without it, definitely they are not going to accept. And they're saying that at the end, my prescription is at the end, I'm going to speak up less than a minute, and my prescription or discharge summary is prepared. So that way they're looking at, and this technology is available to achieve that.
Sure. Thank you. Prasun,
I would like to touch up on 2 of the challenges that you have mentioned, out of the 3 or 4 challenges that you mentioned. The first one is internet connectivity in the remote places. That has been improving, and that is now, after this pandemic, we expect it to improve much faster, so that the technology or the internet connectivity is good in the remote places. But my question is, even if there are internet, forget about the places where light or electricity have not reached. Definitely, there is no internet connectivity. But there are places where there is internet connectivity, but absence of clinicians or absence of good clinicians. So have we reached that places through internet? That's the first thing. So let's do it on a step by step basis. Like wherever there is internet, let us put the clinical resources there, and then maybe we will go to the places where electricity is not there. That's the first thing. And second thing is when we are investing money in terms of treatment, in terms of robotics, you mentioned that the cost is affordable, non-affordable to the common people. See, again, it works on economy of scale. You know, as soon as the as soon as the the thing is starts spreading towards more and more patient, like, see, usually the spending is mostly done for the research and development and coming out with a automation product. But once the product is ready and when you are replicating the service to more and more people, with the economy of scale, the cost reduces and it becomes more and more affordable. But for that reason, we should not start to bring in automation in treatment. Even that is also not good. So let us bring in automation and then scale up the economy of scale so that it becomes more affordable and reach to the patients.
Okay. Josefa, you would like to add to any of these challenges that you...
Rajneesh, I totally agree with the viewpoints that have been expressed so far by the other participants. Automation, the key challenge is that it has to infuse a level of feasibility into the idea or whatever solution it is being it proposes to give. In saying so, I mean that you have to see if it is helping you redefine the level of personalized care that the patients are getting. How is it adding value to the patient care, to the overall patient experience? Because being from the hospital industry, that is eventually the end goal of any hospital. I would like to state two examples over here, slightly non-hospital, for the sake of understanding, and two scenarios going with it. Today, automation has reached our homes. Practically, there is a robot which is available which can automate the entire process of cleaning your house. Now, if you implement that robot in my house, and the only advantage that I'm getting is that the person or the family member who is doing that daily core is now having some spare time to do. It might actually reduce the efficiency of the person overall in the long run, because I may be getting a good amount of exercise. I may be able to, I may now start spending time eating outside, doing some things which I should not be doing probably, and not ending up in doing some non-productive activities. Take the same example of a robotic vacuum cleaner and apply it to a home where I am having two small babies to look after. That is my core responsibility now. Or I'm having my aged parents with whom I have to take care, and I'm not finding enough time to spend with them while doing this core. And now this helps me focus on my core activity. So that is where the advantage of automation lies. And that is how I see automation adding value, whether it is robotic process automation, whether it is a robotic surgery, whether it is an MIS being generated, or whether it is at any level. So that is thing. And then there is another level of automation. We all are used to having ACs in our homes, offices, cars, everywhere today. Now, the technology that comes with it is something which you and I cannot replicate or alternate in our houses or offices. We cannot cool the air enough. We cannot improve the quality of the of the temperature or the surrounding or the office, that ambience that it provides, the advantages it provides automatically. So that is something that you have. Now there are two things that have gone into it for adoption of that technology at that level. It is not that 20 years back the temperature in Mumbai was 15 degrees and now suddenly it has become 30 degrees. So it has become a necessity to own an AC. But today, even the common man or the middle income family man is feeling that, okay, I should go in for an AC. So as the technology has come to be used more and more, the technological cost has come down. Hence, the rate of adoption has increased. So that is also a challenge. So any new technology which comes today, it may come at a higher price, but as it starts getting used and getting more and more used, then the adaptability factor also increases. So these are some challenges. The other major challenge that I see as happening is understanding and fully accepting and owning the full advantages of technology rather than seeing it as additional work or adding to your work factor. So unless and until the people with whom you're working or for whom you're provisioning the solution, they don't see it as an added value or as a value addition or as adding value to their work, unless and until the purpose of that automation is not embedded into that work routine, then it becomes pretty much meaningless. So eventually, systems are only as good as the users using them. Yes, you can use IT to drive a lot of things, but then a good example of IT-driven culture would be it has to be embedded in the culture. That is what I wanted to say. If you see a few hospitals in the south, what they do is that when the doctors are joining them, they are made to agree to their terms and conditions. That is there in the terms and conditions that, okay, you will be using the IT systems in this manner. You will be not generating any papers in this regards. And if a doctor does not wish to abide by those, they're free not to join them. Now we don't see that across. So without that happening, without the management, the implementation of IT sometimes becomes there is a lot of resistance.
Okay. So we heard about the resistance to automation adoption challenges. I'll take up two more areas now. One is on the cyber security front for the hospitals. What are the issues here, especially with relation to patient privacy? That is one part of it, and the other part is once you are doing automation adoption, and now we have these since last year these telemedicine guidelines also. So in terms of the medico legal conformance vis-a-vis technology adoption, where are we positioned right now? So one is the cybersecurity privacy, and the other part is the medico legal conformance to technology. Again, an open question, so anyone can take it up from the panelists.
From the Can I continue?
Yes. Sure. Please go ahead.
From the medico-legal compliances point of view, the medical records, there are standard norms which every hospital has to abide by. There is a set rule, for IP patients, you have to maintain records for these many number of years. Then within that, if there is a medico-legal case, then till the medico-legal case is over, you still have to maintain the records. If a patient is a minor, then the case has to be the case records have to be maintained for different terms. So all these have to be taken care of at the hospital level. There is no two ways about that, and these are all compliance and legal matters which can end up in the court of law otherwise. So those are things that are standard, which are known. Then, of course, we have certain accreditation bodies like NABH. So they state some further guidelines which help in improving the quality of the healthcare of the patient. So these are all quality care and quality improvement measures which are already there and they have to be in place right from day one. There is no other way around it. Regarding cybersecurity, yes, today more and more awareness is spreading with the amount of external attacks and everything happening. So the security systems have always have to be put in place at the right place to secure your data. Today, the cloud technologies is a very evolving platform, and there are that will, I mean, in the future, one could look at that as a major way going forward in the next 5 years to come.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. So anyone? Yes, Salim, please go ahead. You are on mute. You are on mute. Yeah.
Yeah. Thanks for reminding. First, I'll take the cyber security. The cyber security perspective means there are software tools, and you have to ensure that your data is being secure, and in runtime, your premises is being monitored, and upon notifications are being sent across. Even somebody's trying to hack. Okay. And a yearly basis, based on the hacking and attacks keep coming every now and then you ensure that the latest update of these security related tools are implemented. And especially it is very vital because the healthcare data is very sensitive, and whereby there are some compliances in terms of HIPAA compliances, and slowly the India is not following, but definitely they talks about, but there is no mandate. If you're talking about the accreditation body, that my friend mentioned, that NABH, JCI, they have given a very clean and clear guidelines and ensured that the security perspective is being taken care of. But again, it is a budget constraint for the hospital, and they do not have any choice to not to adopt that. If attacks takes place, then and somebody has ransom attack has happened, then the millions of they're talking about million rupees to get it rectified. So there is no other way to not to adopt it. The hospital have started sensitizing by the different bodies, and the hospital has got the importance of it, and they are adopting it. But again, each and every hospital, they have to put a runtime monitoring system of this cyber security perspective. It is not there. They're saying that after every 3 months, after every 6 months, we are going to do the scanning, and then we'll look at and what types of attack has happened, but that is not going to work. Secondly, if we'll talk about the medical legal case, it is a part of the workflow. If the hospital is digitized, then the workflow and the EMR is there in place, then the workflow is already there, and the technology is already there to take the photos of the wound and are the legal cases and record it and start the treatment. Only the thing is the consent form. It has not been passed as it should be electronic signed. So the consent should be signed manually and uploaded into the medical records or electronic medical records. Otherwise, the rest of the medical legal cases that being electronically, it is being managed very well. And signing the consent form is still the debate, and the discussion is happening on the government level. And down the line, I hope that it's also be a part of the digital signature perspective.
I will just add one small point over here to what Mr. Salim has said. No matter what degree or whatever the degree of technology and security appliances you put in place, eventually security is going to remain a philosophy. It's a philosophy. So the approach that you have to take is that you have to continually train your people, make them aware of the risks. Today, somebody can just open an email from within the organization. It could have some attack and it can populate inside, and then there's no control. You can only put preventive measures like antivirus, anti-ransom, etc., etc. And then the second front is, of course, there that you have to take measures of by way of backups or something that your data is protected, remains protected. Thank you.
Okay. Yes, Prasim.
I'll add what Huzaifa and Abdullah say like the security issue is typically issue of chore and police. So every day there is a innovation in chori, so you have to innovation in security. So this is a continuous process, and there is no stopping it, because again there will be a new way to thief, and then there will be a new way to protect your data. So the challenge, what we usually face is in the medical legal case, is not with the digital data or the soft data. It is with the hard data. There is a directive that you have to maintain the files, the hard copy of the patients. You have to maintain it for certain number of years, and to maintain that amount of files, it takes a lot of hospital space, which could have been sold in terms of beds or services. Now that becomes the biggest challenge, to keep the medical records for 10 years and 15 years and 20 years. When the hospital starts growing, it becomes a very, very big challenge to maintain those medical records within the premises. Now the solution has come. There are a lot of archiving partners. So we pass on the files to the archiving partners. They keep the record, and whenever we want, we have got a service level agreement with them. So whenever we want, they give the file to us within 2 hours of our requirement. So that is the way it is being managed. So there are more players, more subsidy industries going up with the medical industry, to take care of the medical records and other parameters.
Praveen, you would like to add anything here?
Yeah, so there are a couple of points I would like to again emphasize that one, the digital records are now accepted even in MLC cases. There's a guideline by the court there. So it is not a problem. Consent, I agree. Currently, we still have to get it signed physically by the patient. But there are technologies available. I know I have worked in some of the projects in the US where you have, like today you go to a lot of places where, like credit card, if you use, you sign over, they call it a digital pad using a digital pen. So those technologies are there, very much available. But yeah, it's a matter of our government also to acknowledge them. So that's one part of it. Second, when it comes to cyber security of it, so you have to ensure that the records, the patient records, are very well safeguarded. So, for example, if you have a paper record, only one person can see it physically at a given time. But once you have electronic record, people can look at it simultaneously from multiple places. So definitely you have to have policy. One, from your audit perspective, you should be able to know who is reviewing what record, and if it is mandated, he should also specify for what reason he is doing it, right? So some of those, if you apply the right set of rules and the proper manage the dissemination of the information by ensuring that only maybe a consultant who is reviewing the patient, who is treating the patient, can review his record. If he is in one department, peers can review, but not the other departmental doctors can review. So there are different rules that you can possibly play around with, which will ensure safety of the patient record while ensuring it is in digital format, so that it has easy accessibility when you really need to.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Another area I'd like to take up now, Salim touched upon it when he mentioned about that in many cases hospitals work with the open systems, not with the proprietary systems. I will broaden this question. Uh, how, as basically looking after the technology infrastructure of hospitals, have your experience been working with these IT solution providers? So I'm talking about, now there are different aspects. There are these large OEMs who always obviously make a marketing pitch to push their technology solutions. Then you work with the system integrators who are doing the actual deployment. Then there are different issues like security is definitely one. Someone mentioned about archiving. There are so many archiving tools. So there are so many aspects and so many technology providers and system integrators who are coming into the system. So what I would like to understand is in terms of as hospital IT decision makers, how are your relation and the engagement levels with these different kind of technology providers in terms of the SLAs and stuff, and especially last 1.5 years, if we have looked when hospitals have been challenged otherwise to the maximum extent possible, how have these relations with the technology providers changed? It can be in terms of SLAs or otherwise engagement level. Again, an open question. Anyone can take it up. Yes, Salim, please go ahead.
Just
You
let
are
me know.
muted.
Yeah. The question is very valid, and it has got two parts. The one part is it related to the open source, and the second part is related to what we say, just what we have said. So, if you'll ask my opinion on that, and I'll put my opinion on it, that hospital is now doing a program management kind of program management. The hospital, though the hospital own the business, so program manager is going to the program management role is going to be played by the hospital. For example, let's say the HIS is coming from X vendor, EMR is coming Y vendor, and the equipments are there, which is that the Z vendor is going to come to do the integration with that. So the program management in terms of is being taken care by the hospital IT staff to ensure that the data and the workflows are being met based on the business workflow, and data is being sent and consumed accordingly from the different stakeholders. The data is flowing from HIS to EMR, HIS to embedded system to your again EMR, then it will go to external external database where the few people are accessing that database. So all those things are being taken care by the hospital. But the technology perspective, if you talk about hospital, always insist on hospital. The IT departments are very, very advanced in terms of what is the best technologies available in terms of the reliability, sustainability, and cost effective. These three, based on these three parameters, they choose their vendors and they run the program management, ensure that the expected delivery has been made and delivered to the organization. So, for example, even though they say the hospital IT staff is asked, okay, these are what is the integration engine we're going to use? So they will come all the fancy kind of, and just put a lot of things on the table. And the hospital the IT person, if he knows in a bit deeper knowledge of the IT, they'll say the simple. There are the Mirth engine which is there, which has got the capacity to take the unstandard data, transfer into the standardized data, and then send to the destination. Then from the sources, take the data in unstructured data, transform into the structured data, and send to the destination again. So that is not a big challenge, that provided that the IT staff is the well-versed and a thinker out of the box and the state of the art kind of decision maker sitting into the management and convincing them accordingly, and then taking the project ahead. Hope I have answered the question.
Yes, yeah, Joseph,
Today, the way we have to see automation is from the point of view that the technology that you're going to bring in for automation, how long is the validity going to be there? That is a very, very, very important factor today. Today, more and more solutions or hardware or software solutions that are coming in, what is happening is that the life of that, the expected life versus the actual life plan as defined by the parent companies there's a very big difference now. Previously, I used to take a piece of hardware, say a high speed scanner or a high speed printer or etc., or a software, I would expect it to run for a longer period than what they actually do. I mean, today most of the companies, including the major OS vendors and the primary OEM vendors, establish a life cycle of only 5 years for their products. So after 5 years, what they will do is that they will discontinue, stop support after another 1 or 2 years, and that's it. So when we are investing in so heavily in technology, in automation products, and in any kind of technology in IT sector today, we have to be wary about the fact that this technology should last more. Whether it's going to last that much as you are expecting it to last. The other factor, of course, is that how much level of customization you are going to ask from that. So based on that, you are going to end up with a system which may not be able to after a few years down the line, after this thing, it may not be a viable solution in altogether. And instead of being able to take it further up, you may have to scrap the entire thing and buy an entire new product. That is the second factor. The third factor, of course, is in 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 uh, in any automation field. Okay, uh, 20 years back, when I used to look at HMS vendors, for example, okay, I would see, okay, is this one single vendor able to cater to A, B, C, D till Z? Today, I feel that I would prefer a vendor who is working on open standards like HL7 and DICOM, so that any program, any system can be interchangeably used. So I could have a core patient nursing care system, which is talking to my pharmacy, which could be the best of the pharmacy software at the other end, or it could be talking to my general stores, which could be another separate, which could be a best inline inventory system, inventory software today, and then it could offer me a range of automation from within them. So that is something that I feel should be looked at from the development point of view and this thing. Thank you.
Yeah. Can I add
Just
to this? One thing I want to
Yeah,
add
Praveen,
that
just
government also.
please go ahead.
Can I?
Praveen, please go ahead.
Yeah. So I was going to mention that there are, some of the foundations of having a digital framework we laid up, and I think Rajnish, you were mentioning earlier that during the part of the conference, like in the day two, where you had some government speakers also. So they, as part of the NDHM, they have laid out some basic frameworks, and there are a lot of tools available along with it. So if you are able to leverage that, but you will need to have some IT trained resources in your hospital, as part of your team. So that is the catch. You need to have some resources after which you can leverage all these resources, tools that are made available by the government, and they are fairly innovative tools. I have had some experience with them. I had played around, explored some of them, but at the same time, if you do not have enough IT support, then you might have to end up either buying other softwares or IT resources you can consult, and they can use the same NDHM resources and provide you with the platform for your digital needs. So I think there are a lot of efforts happening from the government side also, and we should definitely leverage that. Thank you.
Thanks.
My,
I'll come
my
to this
take,
before question. Yeah,
my
please go
take
ahead.
on this open source and closed source is, open source both open source and closed source has got their own advantages and disadvantages. So now it is basically the philosophy of the organization which decides that they will go for open source or closed source. So that's the philosophy of our organization which takes the decision. I will not say that this is better or that is better. Both has its own advantage and disadvantage.
Okay. Salim, you are adding something. Yes.
Yeah. So see, as I said rightly in the beginning, that whenever the corporate hospital is going to sign and going to adopt the technology, at least there talks about minimum 5 to 10 years of kind of engagement. And of course, after 5 years and 10 years, the technology will be changed definitely. But how scalable is suppose after 5 today we have taken, and after a year a new technology has come, a tool has come, that whether it can be stitched into the existing one or not. So that is also we have to the roadmap in terms of scalability discussed and being done. Suppose after 10 years you are going to change the complete your entire application, but the data modeling, the data will be the same. But so now the next engagement which we're going to talk about, that the new technology is going to come up, it is supposed to be sat on the existing database, the existing data which we have collected for the last 10 years or 5 years, right? So in short, the scalability, reliability, sustainability is very and cost effectiveness is very, very important before we engage with any product vendor or service based organization. So that's the important and the main crux of making a new engagement with the longer period kind of things.
Yes, please go ahead.
Yeah, I have to leave because I've got another appointment. So
No,
I-
sure. We are just
Close, I
closing. I was about to close now, so I'll start with you. 30 seconds to each of the panelists. What is the next step in automation you expect in healthcare over the next 12 months? 30 seconds to each panelist.
Yeah,
Start with you.
automation is actually in healthcare. Automation is divided into 4 sectors. One is the treatment sector. Second is the process development sector. Third is the connectivity and reach sector, and fourth is the data upkeep, data the churning management sector. So we expect a very good advancement in the treatment sector. I am not talking about treatment sector at this point of time, but at this point of time, the most important is process and reach. These are going to be the 2 main focus sectors where automation will be more and more helpful in the coming future.
Thank you. Salim, your point, 30 seconds.
Very hard and deep diving adoption of people process technology by the healthcare organization. If I say people process technology, because I don't think that the technology is a constraint here. People caters 35%, process caters 35%, which altogether these 2 bucket caters 70%, and just 30% your technology. So technology is not a challenge. If you're going to do a digital transformation, then the organization has to decide the right people and the right process on the board, and then decide the technology, and then they will see the success.
Praveen, your 30 seconds.
Yeah, I think technology is here to stay, and you will see more and more mobile-based tools, both adopted by the clinicians in the hospital as well as by the patient. So there will be more focus on providing mobile app-based, as well as mobile portals. I think we'll see a rise in that, and of course, the AI and machine learning will definitely rule going forward. Thank you.
Okay. Huzaifa, you have the last word. Literally, your 30 seconds starts now.
Okay. I believe that strongly there will be new technologies, emerging technologies, and solutions. Will keep on coming. But the key to adoption and successful implementation and getting success out of it is in getting your groundwork and your basic framework in place before embarking upon any such solution and deciding on adopting any solution. So if you have your data in place, if you have your structure in place, if you have your formats in place, it will definitely help by way of digitization and then further automation. Thank you.
So basically, if we may sum it up, the three mantras for automation in future: process, reach, and people. They have been the key areas that we talked about, and we touched upon some of the critical challenges like clinical decision making connecting to technology, the connectivity issue, as well as the budgetary front. Great. Thanks to all the panelists. We were watched by about 300 odd live audience, and these are some of the best practices and decisions that emerged out of this discussion. We'll collect that in a report and share with all the audience so that some of these practices they can emulate in their hospitals also. And with this discussion, we end the second APAC Health Tech Innovation Conclave. Thanks to all the organizations who supported us for this program, and without whose support, such a program of this magnitude would not have been possible. Thanks to all the panelists for such making this last session such an interactive and highly informative and insightful one. Wishing you all have a good day. Thanks a lot.
Thank you very much for the wonderful coordination. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you.